So maybe you've heard the advice before, just do it before you're ready. And while that can be helpful, sometimes that's exactly what you need. Sometimes when it's like starting a business, signing up for a race, going after a goal, we can get in our own heads and we can hold ourselves back and stop ourselves from taking action. So doing it before you're ready sounds like great advice. But sometimes that advice can get you into trouble. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because there's a paradox and there's two truths that are present in this statement. And today we're going to explore that. So should we do it before we're ready, or should we wait? Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the show, runners. This is episode 456 of the Real Life Runners podcast. And Kevin and I are hanging out tonight about to talk about some more nuance and paradox.
Yeah, the nuance is always a fun one.
I love paradoxes.
You were asking me where I came up with this idea, and I don't have a specific thing that I can think back to where I came up with do it before you're ready. It's something that you see online so often, especially among like fitness influencers. Or there's a big push because there's this whole contingent, especially as we move into racing season more, of the run influencers who are like, I haven't trained, I haven't run in 6 months, and I'm doing a marathon this weekend. Do it before you're ready. That's not necessarily the best scenario of how that's going to play out. And then sometimes they do it, and then you get to compare yourself to somebody who didn't train at all and then ran a marathon, or they do it and they get hurt and they're like, oh, but look at me, I'm so tough, I still made it to the finish line, which also seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah, but there is definitely a place where this advice is a good idea, because so many of us hold ourselves back and wait until we feel ready to start. And I think this is one of my favorite pieces of things to say to people that are newly married or people that are waiting or wondering when they're ready to have kids.
Yes.
Because the thing that I always tell them is you're never actually ready. Like, you just have to decide.
Yeah,
because readiness genuinely is a state of mind for a lot of things, but not for everything. And that's what we're talking about today, because there are really two truths here, and they both matter. So the first one is, if you wait until you feel ready, sometimes you'll never start, because we can always justify reasons that we're not ready for things. We need more information. We need more motivation. The time isn't right. I need to do this first. There's so many things that we give ourselves, so many reasons we give ourselves of when I'll feel ready, or once I do this, then I'll be ready. Like, we put all these different contingencies on things, and so many times it can prevent us from starting the thing.
Yeah, I think you hit the two biggest ones there of, I don't have enough information to feel ready, and I want to do these things first. In the kid analogy of, I want to get to this point in my career, or we should take this vacation before we have kids, and then it's going to be different with kids. But there's always another thing that you could put in front of the having kids.
And I do think that some of those things are very good reasons and very justifiable reasons. Like traveling, I think, is a big one. If you are someone that really loves travel and there are certain things that you would like to go see and do before you have children, I think that's a very valid reason to put off starting a family.
Sure, but there's an infinite amount of places you could travel
100%.
to. And so at some point, if you want to have the kids, you have to be like, all right, I've seen a lot of places, I've done a lot of traveling. Yeah. Now we're going to have kids, and then we're going to travel with kids.
Yeah, and that can definitely be done. I know people that do it and are very good with it. It just changes things a lot. But I think that it also...
I get anxiety thinking about it.
That's why we don't usually do a lot of traveling with our kids. But I can also think that people that say those things or use readiness as a reason to not do something might actually not want to do that thing. And so they're just kicking that can down the road. Like, maybe those people don't actually want kids or are unsure of whether or not they want kids or not. And so they're going to be like, I have to do all these things first, and then maybe I'll want them. Maybe I'll be ready for them. But the answer might also be, you just are a person that doesn't want kids, and that's okay.
Yeah, but you don't want to actually say that out loud.
Yeah.
And so you just keep putting up things that you have to knock off first.
Yeah.
Like, the checklist of things you have to do beforehand just keeps getting longer and longer.
I feel like it was like very apparent on the Love is Blind of this season. There was that one girl on Love is Blind. So those of you that like trashy TV like I do sometimes, Love is Blind is one of the shows that I tend to watch. I didn't watch the beginning. I just started maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, but that thing can suck you in. But there was this one girl on there who had always said she didn't want kids, and then all of a sudden she met the guy, and the guy, that was like a non-negotiable for him, is that he knew he wanted kids for sure. But she kept waffling back and forth of, oh, baby, and then, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what actually happens, just like skip forward 10 seconds here. But ultimately, they decided not to get married because she couldn't guarantee that she wanted kids and that she was ready to have kids.
Because she didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't want to have them.
She didn't, but she didn't want to let go of him.
But
she wanted him and she wanted the relationship, but she didn't want the kids. So sometimes there are things that we want, 2 different things that we want that can actually compete with each other.
So you throw this into people who want to train for a marathon.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I've got to accomplish these things before I train for a marathon. And they just keep coming up with new things. And you're like, oh, okay, it makes sense that you'd want to accomplish A, B, and C.
Are you pointing at me right now?
I am not. It makes sense that you'd want to accomplish A, B, and C, but then suddenly those things get accomplished and you're like, oh, but also I have D, E, and F. Maybe they don't want to run a marathon.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Which is completely fine, but they don't want to say out loud.
Yeah.
They don't want to run a marathon because whatever reason, people around them are going to judge them. No one cares if you want to run a marathon. They really don't.
So we have to look at both of these truths. So the first one, like I just said, are that if you wait until you feel ready, a lot of times you're never going to start because we can always keep coming up with reasons that we're not ready. And then on the other hand, if you start without respecting the process, a lot of times it's going to lead you to get hurt, burnt out, or stuck, especially when it comes to running. So that's where the words here matter, right? Because we started the episode with do it before you're ready. And that's where Kevin and I started our discussion when he brought this idea up. Because do it before you're ready, maybe. But in running or like in the marathon or the half marathon, is that really the best idea? But starting before you're ready, I think that can be powerful. So I think there's a difference between starting and then doing, which is just that's just wording, because I guess you could say that starting is actually doing it, but skipping the buildup and skipping the process, that's when things can fall apart.
And that's where I'm going to do a marathon next weekend is a silly thing. Like I'm going to start training for it. I'm going to sign up for a marathon, and then I'm going to put in all of the work required to have a successful run at the marathon.
I would argue that you should probably start running before you sign up for a marathon, because there are people that do that too. There are people that decide that they need a goal in order for them to start doing the thing. So they sign up for the marathon thinking that's going to give them motivation to start running.
And it works for some people. Some people need the race motivation.
Yeah, but some people give themselves too short of a timeline.
Very much. Some people give themselves too short of a timeline. And I'd argue it's a much safer path to sign up for a half.
Or a marathon in a year.
Yes, sign up for...
The timeline matters here.
The timeline definitely matters. Yeah. And the thing is that there are people out there, like we opened with, who are like, I haven't run in a year and I'm running a marathon this weekend. And they get to the finish line. But they get to the finish line just to check off a box and prove they did. And you can use that as a learning tool. I think the lesson is, I should have trained for the marathon. I think it's really the big takeaway that you're going to get off of that. But you can say, no, I just wanted to see how tough I was. I wanted to see if I could do it. If that's all you want to get out of it, then sure. Go try and run a marathon this weekend.
Because then if they get hurt, in the big scheme of things, it doesn't matter as much.
Right.
Because the human body is amazing, and you're going to heal most likely from whatever injury it is. And then if you don't really care about running again after that, then it doesn't really matter that much, because you got your pictures and videos for your Instagram reel.
And if that's all you're going for, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like... You go bigger. I don't know if I was, quote unquote, ready before I ran my first 100 miles. I did not make it to the finish line either. Yeah. But I'm not sure what it was that I was going to need to do to be ready. So at some point, I had to be willing to toe the line. Yeah. Fully willing to not make it to the finish line. Mm-hmm. And it was super disappointing to not make it to the finish line, but I learned a lot off of that.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to just blatantly fail in the attempt, because I was almost 40 miles from the finish line, I made it 2/3, but I
35.
learned... Sure.
You made it to 65.
I made it 2/3. And if you're really willing to gain all these lessons and not worry about what the number on a clock says or the DNF says, then there's something to be said about even doing before you're ready.
Yeah, and I think that is a time that it can be helpful when you're going into it as experience instead of looking just at the results. And I think that this is one of the times that where do it before you're ready is helpful, when this is good advice. Like, the biggest thing that comes to mind of when this is good, and let's look at this both ways, right? Of like, when is this good advice? When is this helpful advice? And where does it go wrong? When is this not when we want to be using this advice? So I think the first example of like when this is good advice is starting energy, right? Like whenever you're starting something. So maybe it is signing up for your first race, or beginning strength training, or getting back into running after a break. So doing it before you're ready is great to get you over that hump, because a lot of times the biggest wall, the biggest obstacle is just doing the thing, just to start. Taking that first step can be the biggest hurdle for so many people. And that's one of the reasons that we often say, if you're not feeling it on any given day, and this could be even just for one of your normal runs, if you're not feeling it, just go out for 5 minutes, commit to 5 minutes, because a lot of times just starting is going to be enough. Of getting over that hump of starting is going to be enough so that you'll just keep going. And that can be on one individual run, or that can be starting a new training goal or training cycle.
Yeah, I like that you added getting back into running after a break.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I took a month off. It's going to be so hard to get back into it, so I'm not going to. Yeah. And suddenly now you've taken 2 months off. Mm-hmm. That's not going to make it easier to get back into it. And I was talking with somebody who used to be on our cross-country team who got away from it and was spending a lot of time in the gym but hadn't been running in a long time, and they started back up, and they were like, oh, that first run was so bad. I'm like, yeah. And you have about 2 more weeks of them. And she looked at me, she's like, really? I'm like, not every run. There are definitely going to be runs during the next 2 weeks that you're like, oh my word, I'm back and it felt amazing. But then the next day is probably going to be terrible. And you've got about 2 weeks when you get back into it after an extended break, or if you start up from nothing, where every day is really just rolling the dice on whether that's going to feel good or not.
Yeah.
And once you're through those 2 weeks, you are going to much more consistently have good days. But still, every once in a while, you go out there for a run and it's just like, all right, well, my body doesn't function today.
Yeah.
It's weird. But getting back into it or starting back up, you've got this window where it doesn't feel great and you still have to keep going.
Yeah, and that's a good time to just do it, right? Just do it before you feel ready, because there's a lot of people that think they need confidence to start, or they need motivation to start, and those things are complete lies. You just need to start. And they've actually done research that shows that you get more motivation from doing the thing after you take action. Like, action creates motivation, not the other way around. People think that they need motivation to take action, and that is just a lie that you're telling yourself. You just have to be willing to start, to go do the thing. And sometimes that requires overcoming a fear. A lot of times that actually has to do with overcoming a fear that we might not even be aware of, whether it's a fear of getting hurt, a fear of looking dumb, a fear of not being successful. There's lots of silly little fears that live in our subconscious that hold us back from doing things.
Yeah, no, there's fears all over the place. I mean, I think of this one of trying to come back off of hernia surgery, and I kept running, and after a few minutes, it hurt. And so then I would take a walking break, and then I'd try and run, and after a few minutes, it would hurt. And so I'd take a walking break. And at some point, like, I was getting really frustrated, annoyed, and getting down on myself. And you were like, try just running through the pain. What if it's uncomfortable, but you run anyway? And it was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. You're a doctor. Let's see how this goes. Because what was the worst that was going to happen? And that's, I think, what I asked you. Is what's the worst that could actually happen if I do this? Like, how bad is this going to be? And you were like, you're not going to re-hernia yourself. I think you used actual appropriate medical terms, but essentially that was my worry, is I'm going to go out for a run. This pain that I have is literally just going to rip holes in my body, and I'm going to be back where I was. And you were like, no, you can just actually keep running. And I did. I pushed through the uncomfortableness, and 2 minutes later, my form was better, and the pain was gone, and I was running again. Yeah,
because sometimes that first mile is a liar, right? Like, we've used that one before as well. So there are times that just starting, just doing the thing is a good idea. And I think that the other example that you used of just signing up for that race is a very good example, because you had never done an ultra marathon before. You had never done 100 miles before. One could argue or one could offer this suggestion that, like, you could have tried a 50K first, or
I did a 50K around our neighborhood.
A 50 miler first.
I did 43 miles around our greater neighborhood.
Fair enough. But that was in training for the 100 mile after you had already signed up for the 100 mile.
Yes, but that's part of the respect the timeline. Is I was like, okay, this race is all the way out in here in the future. I have a time window that I could get in these big runs in training, and I thought that was going to be sufficient, helpful. I don't know. It was helpful, but not sufficient, I think, is ultimately what that kind of came down to. Yeah,
and I think that ultimately it's going to be hard for you to ever know if you're ready to do something until you do it in a lot of ways, especially something like an ultra or 100 miles.
Or kids.
Or, yes, or kids, or a marathon. Because in a marathon, you don't run a marathon in training for a marathon. So there's a lot of people that if you're only going up to 18 to 20 miles, they really question and doubt whether or not they're going to be able to make it to 26. And when you were training for 100 miles, the longest you went was like somewhere between 40 and 50 miles. There's got to be a lot of doubt in your mind of, am I actually able to run 100 miles? Because your training didn't even come close to that. So there's got to be that question of, am I actually ready? And so I do think that is another time where you have to trust the process enough and trust that you have done enough training, because it's not like you went into that without training. You followed good advice and good training plans, and you did a lot of research. You had a lot of information. And then there becomes a time where once you do all of those things and you know that you have put in the work to prepare, sometimes you have to just jump and you have to do the thing to test it.
Yes. Once you know that you've put in good work, then it's okay to jump in and be like, all right, I'm as ready as I'm going to get. I don't necessarily feel ready, but I'm not sure what else I would do to feel more ready. I think that's the thing. I did it before I knew I could do it, but I did it once I had put in enough work to feel like I could probably do it.
Because there's never a 100% guarantee in anything.
Yeah.
Even if you've done it before, there's a chance you might not finish. Think about how many, especially ultra marathoners.
I think that's the most interesting thing about running 100.
Yeah.
Is the next one I do, I might DNF.
Yeah.
That's the most intriguing part of every time I sign up. I'm not going to...
Intriguing, insane, either way.
The odds of my DNFing a local 5K are so small, but the odds of my DNFing 100 are definitely measurable.
Yeah.
There is a good percentage that I just don't make it to that finish line.
Even if you've done it before.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Which is, it's so weird.
But that's part of it, right? So those I think would be some good examples. Or like we said, kids, again. Also kids, because you're just never going to be ready because you genuinely have no idea what you're even getting yourself into. So there's no way to tell if you're ready for it, because there's just no way to know.
Also, you're not.
Also, ultra marathon. Also, you're not. Yeah, you're both ready and not ready all at the same time.
You're not ready. And then at some point in time, that adorable baby, which is also like a gross pooping machine, is going to grow up and become a teenager, and you're not ready for that either.
It means you're not ready for any of the stages, but yet you are ready. All of the stages that no, we're not barking. All of the stages that we've gone through in parenthood have prepared us for parenting a teenager. That's why they don't just hand you a teenager, because they've given us a warm-up.
Excellent. All right.
Dynamic mobility warm-up in parenting.
As the toddler years is our dynamic mobility.
Toddler years.
There's a lot of jungle gyms. I feel like it's related to dynamic mobility.
Things. Yeah.
All right, so let's move into where just start before you're ready can go terribly, terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And this is really where you skip all the foundation and you just try and jump into a thing. This is doing the marathon with absolutely no base training. This is speed workout multiple times a week when you are just getting into running. This is high-level strength training where you have no foundational movement things. This is strength training without changing what you're doing in your running. There are so many things that can show up where you miss the foundational pieces. and you're just like, I'm going to do this because this part looks cooler, and I don't want to do steps 1 through 12. I just want to be at the finish line because the finish line looks cooler. This is climbing a mountain, but you're not actually climbing a mountain. You're just taking like a helicopter ride, and it's dropping you on top of the mountain because then you can get the cool picture, but you didn't put in any of the work. So it's not really fulfilling, and it's possible that you get hurt falling out of a helicopter.
Yes, falling out of a helicopter.
When it takes you to the top of the mountain.
Why would you fall out? Why wouldn't it like drop you off? And
I was trying to highlight the danger of it. So in my metaphor, you have to fall out of the helicopter.
But I think this ties into what you were saying before about like people on social media that just decide they're going to run a marathon because they're an influencer and they're being paid to run this marathon, but then they don't actually put in the training for it, and they just decide they're going to run a marathon one day because it'd be fun. Get ready with me. It's time for a marathon.
Yeah. But then they don't actually respect the process of the marathon.
Yeah.
They don't appreciate the process of the marathon.
They don't even understand it.
So then anybody that's following them is now also guided to not respect the process of training for a marathon.
Yeah.
Now it looks like it's just this like cool, quick thing that you can do, and it's not that. I'd argue that they missed the whole good part of the marathon. That they thought that the best part of the marathon was getting the finisher's medal around their neck.
Ooh, I like that.
But that's not. That's just this neat, shiny thing you get at the end. But the best part are the miles and miles that you put in. Like the best part.
That's where the transformation actually happens.
Yes, the transformation. I'm going to butcher the quote from one of my favorite books, but the transformation happens one molecule of rubber removed from the sole of your shoes at a time.
Oh, wow. Is that Once a Runner?
Yes, it is.
I knew it.
That's where the real transformation comes from. The transformation comes in from the miles spent on trails and roads and the early mornings and the time in the weight room. It's not because you crossed a finish line and somebody put a shiny thing around your neck. It's not because you put a bib on your chest and then put a GoPro on a stick and filmed yourself. Here I am, mile 1. Here I am, mile 2. Here I am, mile 3. Yeah. Enjoy the people around you. And like in ultras, there's some people that actually do a really good job with a GoPro on a stick, but maybe not at your local 5K. Maybe not at the expense of those around you.
Not at the expense of those around you. I think we could get into a whole different rant about the need for people to film themselves doing everything nowadays. And I think that people could argue that I'm one of those people too. Like I do, when I'm out on a run, like I get 15 seconds of footage of me running because I want to make a video that's going to then be posted on TikTok or Instagram for the point of helping other people. That's one thing, is I'm not just doing it to just brag about my running. I'm using that as B-roll to then put in tips and things about running. But even so, there's a whole different thing that we could talk about there about needing to document everything. But I think that highlights the influencer trap, which is what we're trying to talk about here with social media, because a lot of times you'll see something on social media and people will be like, run a marathon with me without any training, or run a marathon with me in going from zero running ever to running my first marathon in 8 weeks. But a lot of times those people that you see are 20-something-year-old people doing those kinds of things.
Or from zero running, but they skim over the fact that they've been a competitive cyclist for the last decade.
Or a swimmer, right? Like they have a ridiculous cardio base. Yes, you might be new to running, but you are very athletic and you have a huge athletic background.
Like former professional soccer player, let's see how I do at the local 10K.
Yeah.
I bet you do pretty well.
Exactly. And I think that's a lot of times what people will gloss over. They see other people doing some ridiculous thing and they think that means that it's okay for them to do it that way also. And I am all about using people for inspiration, for sure. If you see somebody out there doing something inspirational, I know Oprah was one of these people for so many people that brought people into marathon running. People saw Oprah run a marathon and thought, oh my gosh, if Oprah can do it, I can do it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that people can use other people's stories as inspiration perfect, but you don't have to do it the same way that those other people did it. And there's really no way that you can do it the exact same way. Let's just continue with the Oprah example. Oprah is a billionaire. When she ran the marathon, she wasn't, I don't think, a billionaire with a B, but she was a multimillionaire with lots of resources and personal trainers and chefs and time to recover and massage therapy and physical therapy. Like, she had so many people in her entourage that were helping her body be as prepared as it could be for that race and to recover as best as possible from all the things that she was doing.
She looked a little bit like Kipchoge breaking 2. She had all the coaches, and she literally had...
She had multiple people running with her in the marathon.
She had a group of 6 that like looped her as a pacer. Now, they didn't form like a perfect aerodynamic V in front of her, but there was her group of pacers that went through and did the whole thing with her. And yes, there was definitely security that had to make sure that they could hold that pace too.
But that's the thing that we oftentimes tend to either gloss over or that we aren't even aware of. We don't always see the background or the person's age or their recovery capacity. If they've done similar things like this in the past, like Kevin has said, if they were into cycling or swimming or some other like ridiculous aerobic base, or what happened after, right? A lot of them won't show you what happened after that either. They'll show you the highlight reel because social media is a highlight reel. So they'll get whatever B-roll of them running and they'll put inspirational music and they'll show themselves crossing the line and getting the medal. And all of that is incredible. I'm not trying to downplay anyone else's accomplishments. Just be aware and be careful what you use to base your training off of. Use whatever you want for inspiration. If someone inspires you to do something fantastic, that is awesome. I love that. But just remember, just because something is possible for someone else does not mean that that's the best way for you to do it. And that's what we have to really look at.
It's related to the trap of the Olympics.
Yeah.
Is you see these people and you're like, these are just people, and you go through and you get their stories and they're like, they've overcome all of these challenges. And it's, yes, they have overcome all of these challenges and they have done these things, but they're also genetic freaks.
Yeah.
And to be able to be like, if I just worked as hard as them, no, probably not.
Yeah, how many people watched curling and thought to themselves, I could totally do this?
The group of U.S. guys who then became professional curlers and medaled 4 years ago.
Did that actually happen?
Yes.
That's awesome.
That's actually what happened.
But there's so many times that you watch these Olympic events and you go one of two ways. One is, oh my God, that's incredible. I could never do something like that. When you watch the people flying through the air and twisting and turning their bodies in a million different directions before landing on 2 skis, which is just so crazy. And then the other way, if you look at it, you're like, yeah, I think I could probably do something like that.
Which is why they should always, before any Olympic event, just select a random person out of the audience and have them try it.
Perfect. Oh, that would be fun.
Give it a shot.
I'm down
just
for
so
this.
We can see what the base level should look like and then bring out. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but these people are genetic outliers. If you look on a bell curve, they're not even on it. They're so far to the right of the bell curve that you can't see them anymore. And a lot of people look at the Olympics, they're like, oh, that's inspiring. If I worked hard, I could do that. And you probably can't unless you're also a genetic freak and you just haven't realized it yet.
The Olympians require both, right?
Yes.
Like, it requires you to be so far superior genetically. You have to have a certain setup and then work super hard on top of that.
Yes.
Because there are genetic freaks of nature that don't work hard, and then they're not going to get those results. And then there are normal people that work really freaking hard but could never make it to the Olympics.
Yes, exactly. And I think that sometimes you're going to, just by odds, you're going to get people who are somewhat genetic outliers that fall into this influencer trap of, oh, I trained for a month and a half and ran a marathon. So if you have some athletic background and you're a bit of a genetic freak, you could probably pull that off.
And so people like that can start, and before they're ready, they can probably do things before they're ready or before anyone else would be ready because they have the genetics to back themselves up, or they have the age or the recovery capacity or the lifestyle to get away with some of those things.
They probably don't have teenagers.
Or they have nannies.
Yes.
But I think that this is really what we, especially those of us that are over 40, really need to keep in mind of doing things before you're ready and being very careful, because after 40, our body does go through changes and we have less resilience. It takes longer to recover. We have hormonal changes that change how our body adapts to training and to stress. We have just more life stress, like those teenagers and jobs and responsibilities. And so sometimes in your 20s, you can get away with doing things on less training. You can get away with being able to accomplish things and not really going through the entire process. But in your 40s, your body keeps score more.
Yeah, like it always keeps score, just it does it correctly now.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was fudging the numbers a little bit.
Well, we just had more, we had more of a backup system. Like we had more empty storage on our computer.
Like we could make so many more little mistakes in our 20s, and our body was like, don't worry, I see what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
Here's the adaptation.
I got you, you're good.
Like
it's like kids too. Like even when you're young, like when kids fall and they hurt themselves and then they're back out playing like 2 minutes later.
Yes.
They're so resilient. They can just bounce back so quickly. Whereas if you're 45 and you fall, it takes you 2 weeks to recover from like nothing.
Yeah, no, it's the comeback is brutal, and nothing quite moves as fast, nothing adapts as fast.
Because your body's different.
Because the recovery takes longer, and so it takes longer before you can put the next adaptation set up. You can't stress yourself again because the recovery is taking longer. Yeah, the longer recovery, the hormonal changes, not a fan of it.
Yeah.
It's getting me way slower results in a weight room than I remember in my teens.
In your teens, yeah. And I think that this is really what it all comes down to, which is the missing piece of all of it, of doing things before you're ready. The missing piece is the timeline. And the real issue isn't starting before you're ready, because it's a good thing to oftentimes to start before you are mentally ready for something, because we become mentally ready for things by actually starting, and we gain confidence by actually doing the thing. But the problem is when we're not physically ready for things and we're trying to jump into those things, and it's expecting results before you give your body enough time to adapt. So a lot of times, and maybe that's a good distinction to make too, right? Is doing things before you're ready mentally versus doing things before you're ready physically. There's a line there I think that we can talk about also.
100%. And then that gets you to the issue of, it's not that you're starting before you're ready, it's that you're expecting the results as though you've gone through the whole process.
Yeah.
It's expecting that starting is the same thing as successfully accomplishing. And starting is a great thing when you're not totally ready, as long as you're prepared for all possible outcomes. And those could be some negative outcomes. That's where the timeline comes in. That's where I suggested that even racing an ultramarathon is going to be okay because you're not ready for it, but you've got a lot of learning to do. And this is a place where it's like, accept all possible outcomes. And I was so well aware that DNF was a possible outcome.
Yeah.
That's part of the, it's okay, I'm going to learn from it.
Yeah, because if you're willing to accept all possible outcomes, then I think that you could argue you are actually ready for the thing.
Yeah.
Because you're not delusional.
Then you're always ready.
Yeah, then you're always ready. Because readiness, I mean, what is readiness, right? Is it a feeling, or is it more something that you build? Is it just a decision, right? Like, I think that it can be all of these things. I think that it can be a feeling. I think it can be just a decision of deciding I am ready for that thing. And I think that you can also build readiness over time, because when you build strength, when you build mobility, when you build that aerobic base in your endurance, when you build your nervous system capacity, you then have more confidence that you're going to be able to do the thing, which will then help you feel quote unquote ready.
You also have the tools, the physical tools to be more ready than without those. Like, you need a certain level of strength. You need a certain level of mobility and aerobic base. And if those things are all set at zero, you're not ready at all. You're not going to feel ready. You're definitely not physically ready. I could have gone couch to ultramarathon. I would not have DNF'd at mile 65-ish. I would have DNF'd at mile 5-ish. And sure, you could say you learned something. Yeah, I learned
at least you started.
Yeah, I learned that my aerobic base is nowhere near where it needed to be.
Yeah.
I would not have learned much. I would have learned I can't just go off of absolutely nothing.
But I think this was like one of your main takeaways after your last 100 too, is you realized the importance of strength training, and that you were not actually, or you are not currently ready to take on the Western States 100 in the body that you're currently in.
I know. I'm still going to enjoy watching it in June, though. It's probably a good thing that I did not get in off the lottery.
It was a very good thing because your body is not ready for it.
Yeah. So
like climbing a mountain, like you running 100 miles on flat Florida land is much different than running 100 miles through a mountain.
I think I could handle all of the ups. I think that I would literally break into pieces on all of the downs. I think that's the issue.
We might have to remind you of what literally actually means here.
Even on California carpet trails, literally break in half. That's what I'm going with.
There you go. So when we talk about doing it before you're ready, again, there's always a caveat. There's always nuance. Sometimes it is good for you to do it before you're ready. I think it's a very good thing to start before you're ready, or to do things and, like Kevin said, be willing to accept all possible outcomes. That tells you that mentally you are ready. And then allow yourself, make sure that you are giving your body enough time physically to have the best chance of success, I would say, would be a good way to look at it.
I think that's the thing is, are you physically most likely capable of being able to do the thing?
Yeah.
Then go for it. Like, it's not just hop in and do it and, I don't know, maybe it's going to go terrible. Put yourself in a position that you are most likely going to be very successful. And it has to do with all the things. Put yourself in a position. We started with having kids and we're like, oh, if you really want to travel, then take that big trip that you want to take, but don't take all of them. Take one of the big trips and then say, all right, now I've done that. I've put myself in a position where I feel like I'm now capable of doing this.
Yeah. So here are some questions that you might want to think about when you're deciding whether or not you should just do it before you're ready. So the first thing to think about is, am I starting something new? Am I just waiting to feel ready before I start something? That's a good time to go for it, right? To at least take the first step. Get started on whatever it is, because maybe mentally you're just holding yourself back. The second thing to think about is, are you expecting your body to perform at a level that it's not ready for, that you haven't trained for? That's a red flag, right? If you are thinking to yourself, I can run a marathon and qualify for Boston, but the longest you've ever run is 10 miles and you're not even close to the Boston qualifying pace, then the likelihood of you actually achieving that goal is very low based on the training that you've put in. So that's something that you got to look at.
It's nice to have that goal out there, though.
Sure.
I want to run a Boston qualifying marathon.
Wonderful. Give yourself a better timeline.
Sure. As it gets closer and closer to the race you're going to use for your Boston qualifier, and you're like, I'm nowhere near the pace on my 5-mile training run, then you've got to adjust what your expectations are out of that goal.
Right. So I think it's very important for us to be honest with ourselves and really start to see, where might we be rushing something that your body hasn't had time to build yet, right? Are we trying to rush the timeline because we really want to achieve that goal, and we're trying to just do it before we're ready because we want to just check that box, we want to get that goal accomplished so that we can move on to the next one? Or are we actually enjoying the process? Are we actually allowing ourselves to go through the process, to build the right foundation, to make sure that we are actually integrating these things into our life, into our philosophy? Because I think that's a big question of, why are we doing this whole thing in the first place? Like, that thing that you are waiting to be ready for, why do you want to accomplish that thing? Why do you want to do that thing? Do you want to just do it so that you can check a box and get it over with? Or do you want to do it in a way that is going to help you grow and evolve and become a stronger version of yourself?
I think that is the key question, is, are you box checking? Because if you're box checking, your body can overcome a lot of things.
Yeah.
And
if you're just box checking too, then you can give yourself a lot of recovery time.
All sorts of recovery time. If this is something that you would like to improve and get better at, if this is something that you think can improve you over a longer term horizon, parenting, not ready for it, but I think that being a parent has improved me as a human.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think that it has
best
made it
growth opportunity ever.
It's fantastic. And I was not ready when we started, and every day there's new things coming up and I'm like, I wasn't ready for that.
I know. And that's why we have coaches. That's why I have a life coach, because my life coach helps me to see things differently, because I'm not ready for some of these things.
But if you appreciate that this is going to be a longer term growth process,
Yes.
then you appreciate the steps along the way. You appreciate the journey, and you're not just rushing to try to get to the finish line. There's not a finish line in parenting, and as much as there are finish lines in running, it's not that you cross when you're be like, now I've finished running. Like I won at running. Even people who win gold medals in the Olympics, they're not like, all right, I did that thing, now let's move on. It's a lifelong thing that you can continue to do and see how it changes as your body evolves, as your relationship with running evolves. It's something that can continuously change and update and evolve. And that's the fascinating part. Rushing to the end, starting before you're ready is great. Just doing the thing without trying to enjoy the process is a whole nother ballgame. And I think that is the trap that doing before you're ready can sometimes let people fall into.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of people do it for the wrong reasons. I shouldn't say the wrong reasons, but maybe questionable reasons. Are you just doing it so you can post something on social media so that you can tell your family member or your friend that told you that this was a dumb idea, you could prove them wrong? There's so many different reasons why we're doing things. And so I would just invite you to think about why you want to achieve any of the goals that you have for yourself, and make sure you have a good reason for it, because to be a good reason would be wanting to grow, wanting to test and see what you're made of, wanting to challenge yourself. Like, all of these things are great reasons, but doing it so that you can post something on social media, is that really why you want to do the thing? I don't know. I'm not going to say that's a bad reason by any means, because everybody's got lots of different perspectives on things, but I do think it's a good time to examine it. So yes, start before you're ready. Do some things before you're ready, but also make sure that you're giving yourself a good timeline and honoring the process. If you found this episode helpful, please do us a favor and leave a review, share it with a friend, share it on social media, help us reach more runners and help more runners to train with intention and feel better in running and in life. Thanks so much for joining us today. This has been the Real Life Runners Podcast, episode number 456. Now get out there and run your life.